Welcome to the Deep Dive. Our mission, as always, is to cut through the noise and give you the insights you need.
And today, we're diving deep into a really fascinating figure and, maybe more importantly, the blueprint he represents.
That's right. We're talking about Michael Bloomberg, but this isn't just a biography.
No, not at all. We're looking at the architecture of modern power, how wealth, specifically wealth built on financial data, translates into something else entirely.
Yeah, how do you go from selling information to Wall Street to running New York City for 3 terms and building a media empire along the way?
It's an incredible trajectory. Started, remember, after he was let go from Salomon Brothers, took that partner's check and had this, well, brilliant idea.
The Bloomberg Terminal.
The terminal, exactly. The idea that Wall Street would pay almost anything for fast, reliable financial data all in one place. And he was right. That black box became indispensable.
And the sources we looked at, they specifically point to him as a prime example, maybe the example of the plutocrat in politics.
That archetype. It's a key concept for understanding how figures like him operate.
Okay, so let's unpack that archetype. What makes this plutocrat as politician different? What are the sort of core advantages they have because of their huge personal wealth?
Well, there are 2 main things, really. The first one's the most obvious. Money. Cold, hard cash.
Their own money.
Their own money. They can bankroll their campaigns directly. Think about what that means. He reportedly spent over $100 million of his own cash just for that first mayoral run.
Wow. So no need for endless fundraising calls, no dialing for dollars.
Exactly. It insulates them almost completely from traditional donors and, the pressures that come with relying on outside money. Their agenda isn't necessarily beholden to those interests in the same way.
Okay, so that's the direct financial independence. What's the second advantage? You said it was more strategic.
Right. The second piece is their personal foundation. This is the long game, you could say.
How does that work? These aren't explicitly political, are they?
Not usually, no. They fund things like, civic improvements, arts, public health, education initiatives, things that seem purely philanthropic.
Right.
But by doing this, often for years, even decades, through tax-deductible donations, they build this enormous reservoir of goodwill. They create this vast network of civic support.
So they've basically bought influence and access across the city, or even the country, long before they ever announce they're running for office.
Precisely. They have a seat at the table in all sorts of important conversations. It builds credibility, establishes them as problem solvers. It's a permanent sphere of influence.
It's a really powerful combination, financial muscle for the campaigns and this deep-rooted civic network built over time.
It is, and that's really what we're tracing today. That whole pipeline, starting with how the money was made, that edge in information, and following it all the way to political power.
Right. So let's start right there at the foundation, the data empire. And it all comes back to that terminal.
The Bloomberg Terminal, yeah.
Yeah.
For anyone in finance over the last few decades, it was just there, on the desk, essential.
What made it so revolutionary at the time? What was the landscape like before?
Well, before Bloomberg, getting financial data was slower, clunkier. You had shared ticker tapes, you were making lots of phone calls, information was fragmented. Bloomberg saw the need. Wall Street craved speed, accuracy, and having everything in one place. Real-time prices, news feeds, analytics tools, trading capabilities, even secure messaging. It was a closed ecosystem.
And they paid a fortune for it, right? The subscription costs are legendary.
Astronomical. But firms paid it because they had to. Not having it put you at a massive disadvantage. It was the price of admission to the high-stakes game. It gave you that edge.
There's a story in the source material about Steve Cohen, the hedge fund manager.
Oh, yeah. That one really illustrates the terminal's power, doesn't it?
Tell us about it.
Well, when Cohen was facing some serious legal trouble, he apparently told his employees he didn't want them reading the news about him on their Bloomberg terminals.
Wow. Not just don't read the news, but specifically don't read it here.
Exactly. It shows the terminal wasn't just another news source. It was seen as the definitive, real-time source of truth within the financial world. Even when that truth was damaging, its ubiquity made it the central nervous system.
And if you control that nervous system,
you have immense influence. You shape the environment.
Okay, so the terminal provides the data. But why is the speed and exclusivity of that data so critical? You mentioned edge. Let's dig into that. What exactly is financial edge?
Right, edge.
Yeah.
It's the holy grail in trading.
Yeah.
Basically, it's having information that lets you make a smarter bet than the next person. Information they don't have yet or can't process as quickly.
Because beating the market consistently is incredibly hard.
Brutally hard. Especially in highly liquid markets. Most managers struggle to consistently deliver alpha, those returns above the market average. If you can't find an edge, you can't justify your fees, and eventually, you're out.
So the hunt for edge becomes this desperate, almost existential pursuit.
Absolutely. It's a constant, high-pressure race, a zero-sum game often played out in microseconds against every other major player globally.
And the lengths these firms go to, I mean, the sources describe measures that sound less like finance and more like, I don't know, intelligence agencies.
It really does blur the lines. It goes way beyond just hiring smart analysts.
So what are we talking about? What kind of measures?
Okay, first there's the talent arms race. They're not just hiring MBAs anymore.
Right.
They're actively poaching PhDs in physics, math, computer science. They hire economists, sure, but also behavioral scientists, psychologists.
Psychologists, why?
To understand market sentiment, herd behavior, the biases that drive traders' decisions, trying to model the human element, which is often irrational.
Okay, so that's the human capital. What about the tech side, the infrastructure?
Oh, this is where it gets really wild. We're talking about high-frequency trading, HFT.
Where speed is everything.
Nanoseconds matter, literally. So firms spend fortunes on infrastructure. They lay their own private fiber optic cables, taking the straightest possible path, often physically drilling through rock, to get data transmission lines as close as humanly possible to the stock exchange servers.
Just to shave off a millisecond or less.
Exactly. Bypassing the public internet infrastructure.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars spent for a fractional time advantage. Because if your trade order gets there first, even by a microsecond, you get the better price. Or you see the market move before others do.
It's a technological arms race.
Completely. The sources mention firms employing engineers to build custom trading computers, described as being as powerful as those used at the Pentagon. It's a computational war fought over tiny slivers of time.
It sounds incredibly complex, very high-tech, but the search for edge isn't always about algorithms and supercomputers, is it? Some of it seems almost low-tech, but still pretty aggressive.
Yeah, that's the other fascinating part. The ground-level intelligence gathering. It can get surprisingly basic, bordering on, well, espionage. Okay, so imagine a hedge fund wants to know how well a retailer, say Walmart, is doing right now, not waiting for the quarterly report.
Right, they want the info before the rest of the market gets it.
Exactly. So the sources talk about funds literally paying people referred to as soccer moms in one account to walk the aisles of stores.
Just walking around.
Yeah, but with a purpose. Using apps on their phones, observing inventory levels, how busy the checkout lines are, noting promotions, basically gathering real-time, on-the-ground data about sales velocity and foot traffic.
Crowdsourcing proprietary sales data.
Pretty much. And they combine that with higher tech stuff, too, like analyzing satellite imagery.
Satellite images? Of what?
Of store parking lots across the country, counting cars to estimate shopper traffic day by day. It's another predictor of sales figures before the official numbers come out.
That's incredible. It's like building your own private economic indicators.
It is. And then there's the more traditional but still intense human intelligence side, taking CEOs out for lavish dinners. The sources are explicit. This isn't just networking. The goal is to dig for information, looking for subtle clues, off-the-cuff remarks, anything that might hint at future corporate strategy, earnings surprises, mergers, non-public information, basically.
So you put it all together, the supercomputers, the private cables, the satellite photos, the people counting shoppers, the CEO dinners. It's this relentless, multi-pronged assault to get any scrap of information ahead of the competition.
That's the edge. And it's built on having information that is proprietary, fast, and often obtained through means others can't or won't replicate.
And this is what generates the kind of massive wealth that can then be leveraged into other arenas.
Exactly. This connects directly to what economists call winner-take-all dynamics. In this information race, you don't just win by a little bit. The winner often captures a vastly disproportionate share of the profits.
And technology like AI might make this even more extreme.
The sources definitely raise that concern. AI thrives on data. The more data you have, the better your AI model becomes. The better your model, the more users or clients you attract, which generates even more data.
A feedback loop.
A powerful one. It naturally leads towards monopolies or oligopolies. The firms that get the initial data advantage just pull further and further ahead.
Which means the potential for wealth concentration just keeps growing.
It does. It accelerates that polarization. And it creates these moments, these paradigm shifts, where fortunes can be made almost overnight if you spot the change early.
The sources mention George Soros in this context.
Yeah, as someone with that rare knack for identifying fundamental shifts in the market, the big paradigm shifts, and acting decisively, if you can do that, or even better, cause the shift, you get a temporary monopoly on understanding or execution.
And that temporary monopoly can generate a fortune so large.
So large it becomes strategic. It's no longer just money, it's a tool, a political weapon. Which brings us neatly into Act Two.
Right, leveraging that financial power. So the fortune's been made, built on this information edge. Now what? How does it get turned into political influence, maybe even political office itself?
Well, the first and most direct way is that financial buffer we talked about earlier, the ability to self-fund.
Like Bloomberg spending over $100 million on his first mayoral campaign.
Exactly. That immediately changes the game. You're not beholden to donors. Now, proponents might argue that frees you up to focus purely on good governance, unswayed by special interests.
But the flip side is, who are you accountable to?
Primarily yourself, and perhaps the mission outlined by your own foundation. It bypasses the traditional checks and balances of political fundraising, for better or worse.
But it's not just about writing checks for your own campaign, is it? The sources talk about more complex strategies for influence, drawing parallels with others, like the Koch network.
Right. The Koch model, as you called it earlier, it's a much more systematic, multi-layered approach to shaping the political and policy landscape. It's designed to exert pressure from, as the sources say, an astounding number of different directions at once.
Okay, let's break that down. What are the different directions? What are the prongs of this strategy?
There are basically three main channels working together. Channel one is the straightforward one, political donations.
Giving money to candidates and parties?
Yep. Direct contributions, funding PACs, super PACs. The goal here is explicit. Get specific people elected who align with your immediate political or economic goals. It's the transactional part.
Okay, channel one, direct political spending. What's channel two?
Channel two is direct lobbying, often through the business itself or its dedicated lobbying arm.
Yeah.
This is less about elections and more about shaping specific legislation or regulation.
So, fighting for favorable tax laws, deregulation, government contracts, things that directly affect the company's bottom line.
Exactly. It's the tactical, day-to-day work in Washington or state capitals. High-powered lawyers and lobbyists pushing specific policy points.
All right. And channel three, you said this was the really strategic one.
This is where the foundations come back in, but in a more focused way. It's using tax-deductible contributions to fund a whole ecosystem of seemingly independent organizations.
Like think tanks.
Think tanks, university research centers, policy institutes, advocacy groups, even media outlets sometimes.
And how does this act as a force magnifier?
Because it shapes the intellectual climate. It provides the research, the talking points, the expert testimony that supports the political and lobbying efforts. It frames the debate.
So they fund the academics who produce the studies that justify the deregulation their lobbyists are pushing for, which helps the candidates they're funding get elected.
You've got it. It creates an echo chamber, but one that appears diverse and academically rigorous from the outside. It generates the arguments, disseminates them, and rewards the politicians who adopt them. It's incredibly effective at shifting policy over the long term.
And the scale of the spending is key here. The sources note something interesting about setbacks.
Yeah, that when these large donors faced electoral defeats or policy setbacks, their conclusion wasn't, maybe our ideas are wrong, or maybe we need broader support.
It was,
We didn't spend enough. The solution was simply to double down, to pour even more money into the system in the next cycle.
That suggests a pretty strong belief that money is the primary lever, that almost any political obstacle can be overcome with sufficient capital.
It certainly points to that mindset. It suggests that vast personal wealth can, in their view, substitute for broad public consensus or mobilization. You can just fund a perpetual campaign.
So we have direct political spending, lobbying, and the shaping of the intellectual environment. But wealth also buys influence over the narrative more broadly, right? Controlling the information flow itself.
Absolutely. If your fortune was built on controlling financial information, it's a natural next step to want to influence the wider media landscape.
Bloomberg obviously did this directly by founding Bloomberg News,
which became a major global player, challenging established names like Reuters and the Wall Street Journal. Owning the outlet gives you immense power over what gets covered, how it's framed, and how quickly information disseminates.
And there are historical parallels to this kind of media power being used aggressively. The sources mention William Randolph Hearst.
Right. Hearst famously used his newspaper empire not just to report news, but as a personal weapon.
How so?
The sources quote him threatening a rival publisher, Joseph Pulitzer, with a personal assault in the columns of the Journal, making it as personal and as powerful as he can. His papers were extensions of his personal will and power, used to attack enemies and promote his agenda.
So owning the media platform provides both influence and a shield, or even a weapon.
Definitely. And beyond media, that immense financial buffer also allows these figures to simply defy constraints that others face.
Constraints from whom? Business partners, banks.
Yeah, exactly. There's a point where your fortune becomes so large, you achieve a kind of gravitational pull of your own. The sources use John D. Rockefeller Sr. as an example.
Standard Oil.
Right. Early on, he relied on bankers like Amasa Stone. But once Standard Oil was dominant, once his personal fortune was secure, his attitude changed. He became defiant. The source says he wouldn't grovel to anyone.
He didn't need their capital anymore, so he didn't need their deference.
Precisely. He'd reached escape velocity, financially speaking. That overwhelming capital provides autonomy.
And location matters too, doesn't it? The sources mention Cornelius Vanderbilt operating strategically out of New York.
Yes, Vanderbilt used his railroad and shipping fortune as a lever to move even greater masses of wealth, impacting the entire national economy. But his base in New York was crucial.
Why New York specifically?
Because it was the center, the biggest port, the main banking hub, the home of the stock exchange. By controlling key infrastructure and capital flows within that central node, his power was amplified nationwide.
Which brings us right back to Bloomberg.
Absolutely. Built his data monopoly right in the heart of global finance, Wall Street, New York. Then used the fortune generated there to take political control of that same city.
Becoming the ultimate insider, controlling both the information flow and the political levers in the most critical financial center on Earth.
It's a recurring pattern, isn't it? Build the fortune in a strategic nexus, then use that fortune to consolidate control over the surrounding political and civic environment.
Okay, let's try to synthesize this as we wrap up. We've traced a clear cycle.
Yeah, it starts with specialized information or data, getting that edge.
Which generates extreme wealth, a massive personal fortune.
Then that fortune is deployed strategically, right? Direct political spending, sure, but also through foundations, shaping the narrative, influencing policy debates.
Ultimately leading to significant political power, maybe even holding high office like Bloomberg did. It defines that modern plutocrat as politician model.
And this cycle has some pretty serious potential downsides for society, doesn't it? The sources flag the risk of growing inequality.
Right. They talk about the great decoupling, productivity goes up, but wages for average workers kind of stagnate.
Exactly. And the very forces that built Bloomberg's fortune, the winner-take-all nature of data monopolies, the rise of AI, could actually accelerate that trend, potentially ripping that gap wide open.
This concentration of wealth isn't just random either. There's a fundamental economic principle at play, something the sources highlight about capital versus growth.
Ah, yes. The dollar versus D-dollar argument.
Explain that. What are R and G?
Okay, so $2 is the rate of return on capital. Think about the profit you make from owning assets, stocks, bonds, real estate, maybe a data company.
Okay, the return on existing wealth.
Right. And dollar is the growth rate of the overall economy. That generally dictates how fast wages and average incomes rise for most people who rely on their labor, not capital.
And the key point is?
The key point, historically observed and argued forcefully by economists like Piketty, is that $2 tends to be consistently greater than $2. Capital grows faster than the economy as a whole.
Why is that difference so important? What does it do?
Well, think about it. If you have a large amount of capital and it's earning, say, 5% a year, R equals 5%, while the economy and average wages are growing at only 2%, G equals 2%, you only need to reinvest a small portion of your returns, just enough to keep pace with G to maintain your relative position.
Right.
But if you reinvest more than that, or even just let the full 5% compound, your wealth automatically grows faster than the wealth of someone relying on wage growth.
So wealth concentrates at the top almost automatically. The structure itself drives inequality.
It acts as a powerful engine for it. Wealth begets more wealth, and at a faster rate than typical economic growth allows for wages. It becomes a self-perpetuating cycle, concentrating economic power.
And this leads to some interesting ideas about taxation, doesn't it? If income for the super rich is hard to track or define.
Exactly. With complex investments, offshore accounts, deferred compensation, Calculating the true annual income of someone with vast capital holdings can be incredibly difficult. Income tax might not capture their actual economic capacity.
So the focus shifts to the capital itself.
Potentially. The argument goes that for the very wealthy, their total capital, their stock of wealth, might be a better measure of their ability to contribute, their contributive capacity, than their reported income in any given year.
Which is the justification for a wealth tax.
It's the core argument behind proposals for a progressive tax on capital or net worth, yes, to be levied in addition to income tax, specifically targeting those vast accumulations of wealth generated by dynamics like $3 and information monopolies.
It really brings us full circle back to how Bloomberg's wealth originated, commodifying specialized data, selling it to an elite group.
Creating that initial fortune, which then unlocked these other doors.
So maybe the final thought for you, our listener, is this. We've seen how a fortune built on controlling exclusive information can become a pathway to governing.
Which does raise a critical question, doesn't it?
What happens to democracy?
Yeah. What does it mean for democracy, which we usually think relies on shared public information, on open debate, on broad consensus? If the primary route to political power increasingly runs through fortunes built on hoarding proprietary data, on having an edge defined by exclusion.
If the rules are increasingly set by those whose success came from knowing things the public didn't, what does that imply for the future of informed public discourse and truly representative governance?
It's a profound challenge, especially as data becomes even more central to the economy. Something important to think about.
Indeed. That's our deep dive for today. We hope this gives you a much clearer picture of the intricate links between data, wealth, and the architecture of modern power.